guys, and welcome back to Tomes of Terror, my book review series. So, this book that we're talking about today, this is a novella that came out in 2022, and it's called This Is Where We Talk Things Out by Canadian author Caitlin Marceau. Now, I think, this is the first book I've ever read of hers, and honestly, it probably will not be the last because this was pretty great. I liked this a lot. Very gripping, very fast paced, and I mean, it's short, but I blazed through this in probably like an hour and a half or something like that. I have seen this compared to Misery, kind of due to the whole trapped in a remote cabin in a snowstorm with a crazy person angle. And also compared to Gillian Flynn's Sharp Objects because of the kind of fucked up mother-daughter relationship at the heart of the story. So if you're in the mood for kind of a very harrowing psychological horror along those lines, that's also less than 100 pages. I believe the ebook version that was on Kindle Unlimited was 93 pages, if I remember correctly. Then this is probably something you're going to be really into. So the main protagonist of the story is a woman named Miller. And at the beginning, she's packing up to go, grudgingly, it seems like, to spend a weekend with her estranged mother at a remote cabin some distance away, like several hours away. So her fiancé, Florence, is kind of reluctant to let her go, even though she's kind of the one that was maybe encouraging, the mother-daughter dynamic to get better or whatever. Miller isn't too jazzed about this whole prospect, though. It seems like she's mostly been, like, low to no contact with her mom for a long time, but maybe is now starting to feel slightly guilty about that now that her father has passed away. She was much closer to her father, and she loved him very much, and so she feels kind of bad that her mom is alone now, so even though she's not a fan of her mom, she kind of feels like, okay, well, maybe now is time to, like, bury the hatchet. Now, Miller's mom, whose name is Sylvie, she was the one that kind of reached out with the offer of this weekend trip in order to, mend fences or whatever. And Miller, as I said, she does kind of want to do this, but she's not really convinced that her mom is genuinely going to try to repair their ailing relationship. Like, she doesn't really think that that's what she's going for. But she is kind of willing to give it one last shot before maybe potentially cutting her mother off for good. So Sylvie arrives at Miller and Florence's apartment complex, and she just, like, pulls up and, like, honks her horn outside, like, in the parking lot, because Miller has actually never told her mom, like, which apartment she lives in, and does not plan to change that anytime soon. Now, although you would think that because this was mostly Sylvie's idea, that she would kind of try and play nice, at least at first, the picking and needling starts pretty much the second that Miller gets in the car with her mom. I think the first thing that Sylvie complains about is, well, you shouldn't put your luggage on the back seat because it'll get my upholstery all dirty, even though, the bags have been inside. They haven't been, like, sitting on the dirt or anything like that. But it's just, like, these little kind of picking things all the time. Like, she always has to start arguments. So Miller just kind of rolls her eyes at the whole thing, which she's going to be doing a lot as the story goes on. And she just kind of goes along with it just to keep the peace. They haven't even, like, got on the road yet. So the drive is actually quite long, and Miller realizes that she doesn't know exactly where this cabin is. And when she asks Sylvie about it, all Sylvie will say is it's up north, which is obviously not real helpful. So the two of them kind of attempt to make normal conversation, but the dynamic between these two is pretty clear, like, from the get-go. Like, Sylvie is constantly gaslighting her daughter, making, like, passive-aggressive comments about her lifestyle choices, and then when Miller calls her out on it and sort of pushes back, Sylvie kind of plays the victim, like, pretending that, oh, you're so mean to me, like, and Miller's harsh words are hurting her feelings. So I've known a few people exactly like this, and honestly, reading the exchanges between these two characters in this book made me really tense, like, really angry, and kind of, like, exhausted all at the same time. Because, like I said, I think everybody knows people like this. But I mean, that's kind of the entire point. This is a psychological horror story, so it's kind of meant to unsettle you like that. So Miller actually falls asleep during the drive, because, like I said, it's quite far. And when she wakes up, they've got to the cabin, so she still has no idea where she is. And of course, this is very isolated, so there's no Wi-Fi, there's no cell phone service, anything like that. So at this point, she's already pretty annoyed and kind of feeling like this trip was probably a mistake. But she's like, well, I'm here now, I got to make the best of it. So she takes her stuff into the cabin. Now, right here is where the first kind of overt red flags start creeping into the situation. Because it turns out that Sylvie, the mom, has decorated this cabin as close to Miller's childhood home as possible, like given the differences in the architecture between the two buildings, obviously. Sylvie basically took everything from the house that she and her husband raised Miller in and transferred it here, laying it out, as close to as possible to how it was when Miller was growing up. So Miller is obviously, understandably, weirded out by this, and also kind of, there's all these pictures of her, like photographs of her and her dad, who, like I said, she was very close to, like all over the walls and stuff. So that just kind of brings the grief all back on her again. So the whole thing is like really overwhelming. And so she kind of wants some time alone to process her emotions. Sylvie, though, of course, wants to spend time with her daughter and gets real butthurt when Miller just wants to go to her room and rest or nap or whatever. But Sylvie finally, she's like, fine, just do what you want. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. And then when Miller goes upstairs to the guest room, and basically she's like, yeah, I'm kind of sick of this shit. She's going to text her girlfriend to come get her. She realizes that just like the rest of the place, this room too that she's sleeping in is decorated just the way her bedroom was when she was a kid. And now she's very freaked out, and she also cannot get through to anybody. Like her texts and phone calls are not going through because, like I said, there's no cell service out here. So obviously she's kind of wigging out and not really knowing what she's going to do now. Now the next day she gets up and tries to get dressed, as you would, but she finds that all of the clothes from her suitcase or her bags are gone. Now, she asked Sylvie what happened to them, and Sylvie was like, oh, I was trying to help you. I put them all in the washing machine because they stunk of weed. And she's like, and they're in the dryer now, and they're almost done. So Miller, obviously, tries to tell her how, like, shitty and unreasonable it is to, like, go through other people's stuff, like, without their permission. But, of course, Sylvie acts all wounded again. Oh, I was only trying to do something nice for you because your clothes smelled bad, and, I'm just getting shit all over as a result of it. And it's that kind of thing. Like I said, everybody's known people like that. So, yeah, I mean, she's a frustrating, narcissistic, monstrous woman, really. And, honestly, like, she's all the more terrifying in this because she seems, like I said, so real. Everybody knows somebody like this, and it was just kind of, like, making me really tense, like, reading about her. So, obviously, Miller is very pissed off by this kind of, breach of boundaries. So she goes down to the laundry room in the basement to get her clothes back, and she finds out that they're not in the dryer. They're actually still in the washing machine, and not only that, but they're all torn up, and they're covered with bleach, like somebody poured bleach in there. Miller is obviously livid, but Sylvie she plays like innocent victim, right? I must have accidentally confused the bleach for the laundry detergent, even though the two bottles look completely different. And, maybe the tears in the clothes came from the agitator. It's an old washing machine, blah, blah, blah. Miller obviously does not buy this bullshit for 1 second. But, naturally, being the way she is, Sylvie's not going to admit to any wrongdoing, so Miller finally just gives up and is like, okay, whatever, fuck it. Sylvie then helpfully says, oh, there's lots of spare clothes in the dresser in the room that you're staying in. And when Miller goes to get some, she finds, to her horror, that, as you might have guessed, the clothes in there are all, like, homemade replicas of stuff she wore when she was little, only they're adult-sized. To make matters worse, there's a blizzard that comes and hits the area and just covers the whole cabin in snowdrifts, so they can't really go anywhere or drive anywhere. Now, from this point, things escalate pretty precipitously, let's say that. And it starts to become clear that not only is Miller completely trapped with really no way to call for help, but her mom might be way more disturbed than she initially thought. So yeah, I mean, if you're into kind of domestic horror, I want to call it, with kind of that snowbound cabin angle where everybody's trapped there. You can't, like in The Shining or something like that. Like you can't go anywhere, all the roads are closed and everything like that. If you're into that kind of stuff, I think you'll probably be really into this. It's not long, but the characterization of the two main characters is really efficiently done and is actually really excellent. It gets the horror of the situation across without wasting too much time on like unimportant details or subplots or anything like that. And I really like the ramping up of the tension in this was also great. It was like really outstanding. You couldn't help but feel just this kind of secondhand anguish like on Miller's behalf as her predicament gets worse and worse. And it really does get very, very bad. If I had a minor criticism, one big plot reveal was telegraphed kind of early and was therefore kind of easy to figure out, or at least I guessed what it was like pretty early on in the story, like way before it was revealed. But honestly, that really didn't diminish the overall power of the story. It really does keep you on edge for this kind of entire nail-biting journey with these two women. So if that sounds like something you would like I said, if you're into Misery, this is kind of along those same lines, or Sharp Objects, or another book that I've seen it compared to was Darling Rose Gold by Stephanie Roble, I think is her last name. I haven't read that, so I'm not really sure. But that's another one that comes up in a lot of discussions about this. But it's that kind of similar like toxic mother-daughter two-person kind of relationship horror. So if you're into that, then this is like really, really good. And I think this might be Caitlin Marceau's, might be her first novella. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, she definitely seems like a writer to watch like in the upcoming years. So that will do it for this book review. Thanks very much for watching. Remember, like, share, subscribe, and all of that business. And I'll see you again on the next one. Bye.